For years, Bruno Mars built one of the most successful careers in music while revealing almost nothing about the man behind the hits. Fans heard the songs, saw the sold-out shows, and watched the awards pile up, but the real stories stayed hidden behind a carefully controlled image. Then something changed. As Bruno approached a new chapter in his career, he began speaking more openly about the struggles that shaped him, the people who doubted him, the heartbreaks he rarely discussed, and the painful loss that changed the way he looks at life forever. Some of those stories challenged the public image people thought they knew. And when Bruno finally started opening up, he didn't hold back. Before he became one of the biggest stars on the planet, Bruno Mars was just Peter Jean Hernandez, a kid growing up in Hawaii surrounded by music, but far from the glamorous life people imagine today. Music was not simply something his family enjoyed, it was how they survived. His father was a percussionist, his mother was a singer and dancer, and nearly everyone around him seemed connected to performing in some way. Long before he sold millions of records, Bruno was already standing in front of crowds. By the age of 4, he was performing as a miniature Elvis Presley, wearing tiny jumpsuits and entertaining audiences several nights a week. Those performances made him a local sensation. He appeared on television, performed in front of thousands of people, and even landed a small role in a Hollywood movie while still a child. Looking from the outside, it seemed as if success was guaranteed. But the reality was very different. Everything changed when his parents separated. The family fell into financial hardship almost overnight. Bruno has rarely spoken in detail about that period, but the stories that later emerged painted a difficult picture. At one point, he, his father, and his brother were living in extremely unstable conditions. There were nights spent sleeping in places that most future superstars could never imagine. Money became scarce. Basic necessities became uncertain. While classmates noticed his thrift store clothes, Bruno noticed something else. He noticed how badly he wanted to escape that situation. Instead of feeling sorry for himself, he threw himself deeper into music. He performed wherever he could, earning small amounts of money while developing skills that would eventually separate him from almost everyone else in the industry. Years later, when people described Bruno as an overnight success, he quietly disagreed. There was nothing overnight about spending thousands of hours on stage before reaching adulthood. There was nothing overnight about growing up in financial uncertainty while trying to chase a dream that seemed impossibly far away. At 18, Bruno made a decision that would change everything. Armed with roughly $600, a few demo CDs, and an enormous amount of determination, he boarded a plane to Los Angeles. He believed he could become a star. Los Angeles quickly taught Bruno Mars that talent alone was not enough. The city was filled with aspiring singers, songwriters, producers, and performers who all believed they were destined for greatness. Bruno arrived with confidence, but confidence did not pay rent. During his early years in California, he bounced between unstable living situations, shared cramped apartments with other struggling musicians, and took whatever opportunities he could find just to stay afloat. One of the biggest frustrations was that record executives did not know what to do with him. Some saw his mixed Puerto Rican and Filipino background and immediately tried to place him into categories that felt limiting. Others heard his music and struggled to understand how a young artist could blend pop, soul, funk, rock, R&B, and classic influences all at once. Bruno later admitted that people often underestimated him because he did not fit the industry's usual mold. His first major label deal looked promising on paper. Motown signed him while he was still a teenager, and for a moment it seemed like everything he had worked toward was finally happening. Then it all collapsed. The label released nothing and eventually dropped him. For many young artists, that would have been devastating enough to send them home. Bruno stayed. Instead of focusing entirely on becoming a solo star, he shifted his attention toward songwriting. That decision would quietly change the trajectory of his career. Alongside Philip Lawrence and producer Ari Levine, he formed the creative partnership that became known as the Smeezingtons. The group spent years studying successful records, analyzing arrangements, melodies, and song structures with obsessive attention to detail. Bruno later revealed that they practically reverse-engineered hundreds of hit songs in an effort to understand exactly why certain records connected with listeners. The money was still inconsistent. At one point, the team sold songs they had hoped to keep for themselves simply because bills needed to be paid. Bruno once admitted that some of those sales helped prevent eviction. The struggle was real, but so was the progress. Slowly, major artists began recording songs written by the group. Then came a breakthrough. Flo Rida's Right Round became a massive hit. Soon afterward, Bruno's voice appeared on B.O.B.'s Nothing on You and Travie McCoy's Billionaire. Suddenly, millions of people were hearing Bruno Mars without fully knowing who he was. His voice was everywhere, but his face remained largely unknown. When Bruno Mars finally stepped into the spotlight as a solo artist, the success looked effortless. In reality, it was the result of years of rejection, frustration, and relentless work that most fans never saw. By the time he released Doo-Wops and Hooligans, he had already spent nearly a decade fighting for a chance to prove himself. The album changed everything almost overnight. Just the Way You Are became a global phenomenon. It climbed to #1, dominated radio stations around the world, and introduced Bruno to an entirely new audience. Then came Grenade, a song that showed a completely different side of him. Suddenly, he wasn't just a songwriter or a featured vocalist anymore. He was the main attraction. The success continued with hit after hit, and before long, Bruno had become one of the biggest names in popular music. What many people didn't realize was that his rapid rise brought enormous pressure. Every new release was expected to outperform the previous one. Every award show performance was analyzed. Every interview generated headlines. Unlike many artists who openly documented their personal lives on social media, Bruno chose the opposite approach. He kept the public focused on the music and revealed almost nothing about himself. That privacy became one of the defining characteristics of his career. While tabloids constantly searched for drama, Bruno rarely gave them anything to work with. He almost never discussed his family, avoided public feuds, and stayed away from the controversies that often consume celebrities. The strategy protected his image, but it also created a mystery around him. Fans knew the performer. They knew the hits. They didn't know the man. As his career continued growing through albums like Unorthodox Jukebox and 24K Magic, Bruno earned a reputation for perfectionism. People who worked with him frequently described someone obsessed with details. Songs were rewritten repeatedly. Recordings were revisited countless times. Performances were rehearsed until every movement felt natural. That dedication helped him dominate an era of music. Hits like Locked Out of Heaven, Treasure, When I Was Your Man, 24K Magic, and That's What I Like transformed him from a successful artist into a genuine superstar. Grammy Awards followed, massive tours followed, record sales exploded. For most of his career, Bruno Mars carefully separated his public success from his private pain. He rarely discussed family matters in interviews, and when he did, it was usually brief. But one subject always carried a different weight. His mother, Bernadette San Pedro Bayo. Bernadette was much more than a supportive parent. She was one of the people who introduced Bruno to the world that would eventually make him famous. She performed with him when he was young, encouraged his love of music, and helped shape the values he carried into adulthood. Friends and family often described the bond between them as exceptionally close. That is why her sudden death from a brain aneurysm in Hawaii devastated him in a way that few people fully understood at the time. Years later, Bruno finally opened up about how deeply the loss affected him. Speaking about his mother, he admitted that no amount of success could replace what he had lost. In one of his most revealing comments, he said that if he could trade all of his music to have her back, he would do it. Coming from a man whose career had already generated countless awards, sold-out tours, and global recognition, the statement revealed just how much family meant to him. He explained that losing his mother forced him to reevaluate everything. Before her death, career achievements often occupied the center of his attention. Afterward, he began looking at life differently. He said the experience taught him that nothing in the world matters more than family and the people you love. Fame, money, records, and trophies suddenly felt secondary compared to the relationships that could disappear without warning. The timing made the situation even more difficult. Only 3 weeks after his mother's death, Bruno was scheduled to begin a major world tour. He later admitted that he was emotionally shattered. There was no guidebook for handling that kind of grief while standing in front of thousands of fans every night. He described crying constantly and feeling completely lost. Yet he also said that every time he wondered whether he should stop, he felt his mother would have wanted the opposite. That belief became his motivation. Rather than retreating from the spotlight, he pushed forward. He performed while grieving, continued recording, and kept building the career that his mother had supported from the very beginning. Looking back, many people now see that period as a turning point. The performer remained the same on stage, but the person behind the music had changed. The loss gave Bruno a new perspective, one that would influence both his personal life and the decisions he made in the years that followed. By the time Bruno Mars entered the middle of the decade, he had already achieved what most artists spend an entire lifetime chasing. He had accumulated Grammy Awards, sold millions of albums, headlined some of the biggest venues in the world, and built a reputation as one of the most complete entertainers in modern music. Yet despite all that success, public fascination with his private life continued growing. One of the biggest stories involved his longtime relationship with Jessica Caban. Unlike many celebrity couples who constantly shared details online, Bruno and Jessica spent years protecting their privacy. They rarely appeared together publicly, avoided discussing their relationship in interviews, and kept most aspects of their lives away from cameras. For more than a decade, that strategy worked remarkably well. Then fans started noticing subtle changes. Public appearances became increasingly rare. Social media activity that people associated with their relationship quietly disappeared. Rumors began circulating that they were spending more time apart, and entertainment outlets started searching for clues. Yet neither Bruno nor Jessica offered a dramatic public statement. Even as speculation intensified, both remained largely silent. That silence became a pattern during another major controversy that exploded across the internet. Reports suddenly appeared claiming that Bruno owed tens of millions of dollars in gambling debts connected to his Las Vegas residency. The story spread quickly because it sounded believable enough to generate headlines. Social media amplified the rumors, gossip websites repeated them, and many people accepted them as fact before any evidence appeared. What happened next surprised many observers. Instead of launching an aggressive public defense, Bruno handled the situation with humor. While MGM Resorts publicly denied the allegations and stated that the rumors were completely false, Bruno turned the story into a running joke during performances and online posts. Rather than allowing the narrative to control him, he controlled the narrative. Fans shared the jokes. The rumors gradually lost momentum, and the controversy ultimately failed to damage his career. At the same time, his musical success reached new heights. His collaborations with Lady Gaga on Die With a Smile and Rosé on A PT became global events. A PT generated billions of streams worldwide, broke records, earned major award recognition, and introduced Bruno to an entirely new generation of listeners. Meanwhile, his announcement that a new solo album was finally finished created enormous excitement among fans who had waited nearly a decade for a full Bruno Mars project. What makes this moment different is that Bruno appears more willing than ever to reflect on the journey that brought him here. The struggling teenager sleeping in cramped apartments, The songwriter who was repeatedly overlooked, the grieving son who lost his mother, and the superstar standing on top of the music industry are all the same person. For years, he allowed the music to speak for him. Now, as a new chapter begins, he's finally sharing more of the story behind it. So after years of letting the music do all the talking, Bruno Mars has finally given fans a rare look behind the curtain. From sleeping in cars and struggling in Los Angeles, to losing his mother, facing relentless rumors, and becoming one of the most successful performers of his generation, his journey has been far more complicated than many people realized. What do you think was the biggest turning point in Bruno Mars's life? His move to Los Angeles, the loss of his mother, or his breakthrough as a solo artist? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.